I'm at Yonder Bognie, which is a really interesting name. Just been to Rothiemay, which was exciting because it had 15 bulls in the field. This field has nothing in it, and the field to get to the car has only sheep in it, so it's almost easy. This is an interesting circle. What I didn't do at Rothiemay, for understandable reasons, is I didn't take a kind of topology of the land. Although it was on a shallow rise. This is an interesting one. I'll just stand in front of the recumbent and we'll do a kind of pan round. So what's interesting is it's on a kind of shallow. It's on a rise for sure, but there's a kind of dip and then a rise up onto the field, and down at the bottom here a kind of dip and a rise up into the field. And down here there's a really big dip and a rise up into a kind of a longer rise into a hill. And around here there's some spoil in the field, but it dips down to this side, dips down and then back up to a hill, dips down to the road here and back up, dip down and back up here. So it's a really unusual topology. Nothing apart from this hill off in the distance. It looks like a kind of pretty minor hill, to be honest. Doesn't look like there's anything that the recumbent is aligned with. So that was the kind of topology part of it. So what we've got here is 9 stones. So I'll walk through the Great Crowns of Stone plan as it stands and the description, because I think it's quite interesting. Again, it's a bit like Comili. I think what the archaeologists have done is they've kind of looked at what's been left and made something of it, rather than maybe kind of saying, well, what kind of disaster could have, or what kind of, no disaster, but what changes had been made the 200 years previously, over the last sort of 300 or 400 years. So. Stone number 1, east flanker. It's kind of flat faced, and if I stand beside it, it's a good 2.2 meters tall. It's a bit of a triangular shape. There's a large flat front, a kind of flat side-ish, again a kind of flat side butted up against the recumbent, and kind of curved top. But it's a block of a stone rather than a slab, isn't it? It's, well, maybe a little bit of a slab. Hard to kind of tell, but it has a fair lean on it. There's been some shoring up down here. I don't know if that's because its foundation is getting kind of compromised a little bit. What's interesting is that the kind of ground level of the field generally is all kind of fairly level up until the stone circle, and then there's a definite rise. Now that is probably to do with a lot of cairn stones probably being left, and a lot of stones being pushed in, obviously over here, this spoil here. But there might be the socket of this particular flanker might be starting to get compromised a little bit. With that, it's hard to kind of tell. It could be a couple of feet of stone underneath that, but it's hard to kind of tell. But it has got a little bit of a lean. Then we're on to the recumbent stone 2, and this is a kind of monster. It's I think it's 3.3 meters long. So let's do 1, 2, yeah, 3.3. It's got a fairly flat front, although it would look like there's a kind of whole chunk missing down this side. It's flat front. There's a few cracks you can kind of see down here, going from top to bottom, which might be weathering, or it could be the attempt of the stones being reduced. It is wide. It's a bit as wide as some recumbents are long. We're probably talking about 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters at its widest. Its edge here is kind of pointed into the the flanker. A kind of wedge off here, not the flattest back. It seems to have suffered a bit of a section coming off the back here, and a bit of a kind of crack through it. Get on top of it a little bit. Yeah, there's a kind of crack right through it there, so it's kind of suffered either a fair bit of weathering or like I say before, it's kind of a reduction. Round the kind of back to the side again, it could be that there has been a fair attempt of reducing the stone, and that's what's missing here, or it could be the stone that's just the natural stone shape of itself. Again, the kind of bottom of the stone could be kind of getting compromised a little bit because of it's getting, the socket has been kind of worn away. It doesn't look like there's any sleeper stones or anything like that this sits on. It looks like it's straight into the ground, and it has got a slight lean back, so it's kind of fallen back into the circle a little bit. But it is a monster of a stone. It's probably as thick, as wide as old keg. Nowhere near as long, clearly, but it's a chunk of a stone for sure. And going on to stone 3, so this is what they've recommended, or this is what they've recognised as the east flanker. Did I call that one the east flanker? It's the west flanker, that one number 1. This is the east flanker number 2, flanker number 3 stone. And it's a slab of a stone that's fallen into the circle. It's fairly thin, good kind of maybe metre and a half wide at its widest point. It's clearly lost its socket, which I'm kind of wondering that's what's maybe going to happen to stone 1 and falling back, although it could have been pushed across with the circle reduction work that's clearly went on here. But it's an interesting recumbent setting, with the recumbent stone being almost out of proportion with the flankers. It's so big, and the flankers themselves are big, but I mean the recumbent is a chunk. Then we're going to go round, we're going to ignore the stone in the middle, and we're going to go round to stone designated stone 4 in the Great Crowns of Stone. A pretty obvious circle stone. If I stand right beside it in front of it, it's maybe a 2.2 high. It's a bit of a kind of wedge, like a kind of triangular shape. It's probably been used extensively over centuries as a rubbing stone. I think the last time I was here there were sheep in the field, but you can imagine just all types of cattle being in here and maybe sheltering underneath this one, rubbing themselves up against it for a scratch. But it is a chunk of a stone, again a bit of a lean to it, might be losing its socket integrity a little bit. But that's stone number 4. And then we go round to stone 5. Now what this, we're going to start maybe talking about what the archaeologists thought when they came to this. Well, or it was is worked off historical records that mentioned a double circle, a bit like Comili. So this is stone 5 that's been put here. There was records of a stone in between 4 and 5, which apparently was blasted or removed in some other way. There are some spoil stones right across in the corner of the field, and there's certainly large stones making up the boundary wall, which maybe, that's what they've taken away from this circle. But apparently there was a stone in between here that had been removed. So this is stone number 5. We're ignoring this stone here, and instead of sort of following the circumference round of the circle and kind of coming round to the back here, which there's a couple of stones coming out this way, which would kind of follow the circumference of the circle. They're calling this one stone 6, which is a bit odd because again it's not following the larger circle out, but they've got it in their heads about a double circle inside. So they went stone 6. So rather renaming like a centre circle, like the A's and the B's like they sometimes do, they've went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then straight line across to 7, which is fallen, which seems a bit odd to me. I would have rather have, seems logical to me that the circumference kind of comes round. There's fallen stones here, probably broken up, and probably the, you know, like the middle stone there, it was reduced. There's probably a kind of broken stone here that's been left, which follows the circumference, and then follows the circumference round to the fallen stone and back round to the front of these spoil. But to call this number 6 seems a bit odd to me. I'm not quite getting my head round that. Even if there was a double circle and that's all that's left, not quite getting it. Not quite getting the numbering. Maybe I'm not clever enough for this. But I would follow the circumference round here to these stones that are buried in the ground, and then come round to stone 7. So that's stone 6. Let's have a quick look at it again. Pretty much been, it's a relatively small stone coming up to about my waist. Kind of flat sided, but a bit triangular, but definitely been used by the cattle for a rubbing stone. And stone 7, it's fallen. Again, keeping in mind that a stone like this has probably been a good quarter or a third of it would be its socket, would be its how it would be standing up, and this would be the back end of the circle, regardless which one it was, if it was a double circle or just one large circle. Back here, so stone 7, got a large split in it right across. There's no real signs of drill holes, or what you see at Loneheaded Davit is the kind of the long chiselled sections for splitting the stone. There's no real kind of evidence of that. It would look like this has got a kind of split here, like there's been an attempt to reduce it. And this could be the section that kind of goes into the ground, maybe. This is stone 7. And then round to the spoil field, which has got significantly large stones among it. But they've identified this one as stone 8, which is fair enough because it's in a socket. It's leaning over slightly. It's a block of a stone. It comes currently up to just about my rib cage. No real a kind of more boulder shape than anything else. Again, used quite a lot for sheltering cattle and rubbing stone. We'll come back to the rock spoil and these stones in a second. We're coming round to stone 9, which again kind of would seem like a sensible kind of stone to be a circle stone coming round to the recumbent, and it seems to be almost mirroring stone 4 across there. So again, a bit of a kind of triangular shape, flat sided. It's got a really big lean on it, about 45 degrees. I guess if it was standing up, it would be a good 2 meters, 2.2 meters maybe, if it was standing up properly. So yeah, so that's the circle stones as they've been numbered, and like I say, they went for this kind of double circle type numbering, or that's what they started out to be. And they mentioned Comili, and if you've seen my video on Comili, I don't think it's just double circle in the slightest. I think it's been a building site and they've interpreted what has been left as a double circle, which in fact was a normal recumbent circle, a bit like tire bagger or something. So it could be, as the archaeologists have suggested, a double circle. Here it could be equally that the damage between, say, 1705 or 1750 and 1850 was that the circle was vastly reduced and robbed, and the cairn was robbed, and the stones were blasted and moved around, and what you've got left is something to interpret as a double circle. with that stone in the middle being kind of stone 6. So it could be that, it could be interpreted as that, it could be interpreted as a double circle. It would be odd if it was. So what have we got in this spoil then? We've got small, medium rocks. We've got really unusually shaped stones, which would be fantastic circle stones. This kind of like bulbous end could be in the ground, and you know, being anchored the stone up above it. We've got various shapes of stones. I'll see if I didn't take the time to look to see if there's any obvious drill holes or blast marks, but when rounded stone like this has been weathered over centuries, all of a sudden has sharp edges that are fairly clean, you kind of maybe guess that it's been blasted or reduced and all just shoved into a kind of pile. Equally, these slab-like stones could be leftover kerb stones from the cairn, which is you know, they're quite slab-like. They were maybe kind of half buried to keep the cairn stones where they were, round in a circle. There's every reason to suspect that they were maybe that type of stone, as there is quite a few slab-like ones round here. So they could have been dug up from the cairn curbstones and just pushed into a pile like this. There's a lot of kind of smaller to medium kind of size stones kind of lying around as well. Ones that maybe have been split, that were maybe circle stones. These kind of large ones here as well. I mean, this is a fairly large stone to be almost ignored as a spoil. Not got a particularly easy shape to it, right enough, but again, if that was maybe it's split, it could be a fairly large stone. So yeah, I think Yonder Bognie is an interesting circle to interpret, and the interpretation that the archaeologists have come up with is a kind of double circle type. I'm open to that. I'm open-minded to that. I'm also open-minded to the fact that this circle has clearly had a lot of damage and a lot of reductions done to it, and a lot of movements done to it. A lot of stones moved and just piled, some across at the corner of the field, some in the field boundary, some in the spoil, and some just moved around, some blasted. So yeah, I'm open to a double circle. I'm also open to that there was originally just a normal recumbent stone circle, a complete one that's had a lot of quarrymen and workmen do as much damage as they could to it. But yeah, when you kind of stand at the side of the recumbent, it's not often that you have a recumbent edge beyond the flanker and behind the flanker. It's so wide, it's such a monster. So yeah, it's an interesting circle, relatively easy to get to. You do have to kind of park on the main road, which is a bit of a bother. The only place I could really find, having been up and down that road a wee bit, was a kind of like a field entrance just reversing into it. It's not too a busy road, so it's not too bad from that point of view. Walking on a busy road though, a lot of people maybe not quite happy with that. And then up in a field just through sheep, so that's no bother. They're usually scared of me. So it's having to climb over 2 ladder gates, which again, it's all about kind of capability of access. I've certainly had a couple of accidents on them over the recent times with the wet shoes and slipping and such like that. So it's all a matter about how capable you are about getting over these kind of things. But it's relatively moderate access, I would say. It's not straightforward, but there's a couple of things to climb over. And if you're not comfortable about facing sheep, then I can understand that. But facing 15 bulls this morning at Rothiemay was interesting. I was a wee bit nervous. So yeah, so that's Yonder Bognie. It's an interesting name. It's probably the name of the farm or something like that 100 years ago. Quite a lot to see, although there's a lot of stones falling and there's a big stone spoil. There's a lot to see. It's definitely worth a visit. It's definitely had a cairn robbed, although there's no much sign of it now. It's kind of overgrown with grass and such. But yeah, it's an interesting circle. It's definitely worth a visit and see what your own interpretation of the circle is. Was it a double circle? Was it a single circle? And just, you know, that's what this is all about. It's this interpretation of what's left. So thanks very much, and we'll speak soon.